Yeah, look, thanks, Rob, for the invitation for coming along to talk today. I think a common theme, fellow Rotarians and friends, is definitely, like in Louisiana, food and alcohol, I think, goes a long way in Rotary, doesn't it? I know our club in Kingston, it's a major theme every Monday night, and I know a lot of work's done by my local club and just locally and then interstate, overseas, and I know we're just one of many clubs, as we all are, but collectively we do so much. But talking about food that we just mentioned, it was mentioned about frog's legs, and I've got a quick frog's leg story before I start, and that was when I was in Canada maybe about 5 years back. We sat in this restaurant. I had my two kids with me, and I made them eat frog's legs, and they really didn't, and as they didn't want to, and as they were eating a bit more and more, they just didn't like it, and I sort of forced them to, and my wife and I then tasted them, and the frog's legs were off. So I got probably child abuse, but you know, the talk Barbara did was just stunning earlier on. It moved me a lot, but you know, one thing that Barbara did mention was pidgin English in Vanuatu, and I remember when I was there a few years back, and well, it was quite a while ago. I was at a little village, and I was the first white people they'd seen for 3 years, and I was with my wife, and he was trying to explain something called a piano, and you ready for the pidgin English version? Big blacker box, him a got black teeth, him a got white teeth, you hit him hard, he sing out aloud. And I don't know why he doesn't just learn the word piano, but anyway. Look, I've been asked to come along and do a bit of a talk on my life story. Everyone's got their own story, and I guess you're about to hear mine. But anyway, look, like everyone, I was born at a very young age, okay? And my first real job, I started when I was 12, okay? My dad, I came from a family that was a bit of a Brady Bunch family. The big treat each year was either a counter tea or going to the movies once in the year. And so Dad shocked me twice in my life, and the first one was when I was 12 years old. I said to him, "Can I borrow your dinghy and go fishing over the school holidays?" And he said no, and I said, "Why?" He said, "You'd wreck my boat, and but I'll lend you the money." And Dad isn't much of a businessman, but he wanted to teach me a lesson, so he lent me, when I was 12, $2,000 at 10% interest for 10 weeks, so he made $200 out of it in 10 weeks, and on the condition that if I bought the boat and I didn't have the money paid off by the end of the school holidays, he'd repossess the boat and give me the difference between, you know, what he gets and what I owe. So I worked my butt off. I used to cycle 3 times a day to a place near where I lived called Blattons Bay, ticked every house that took them, crossed those that didn't. I remember this beautifully moderately aged lady in her 80s saying to me, "Don't knock the door next door, he's a fisheries officer." And if I had knocked that door, my whole life might be different now, who knows. But I used to sell mullet, pike, salmon, cooter, mackerel, 5 for $1, trumpeter and trevally $1 each. And instead of watching TV, the rules were back before midnight, or when I had 10 crayfish, and I'd sell those for $10 each. So officially I poached until I was 17. I left school when I was 16, and I finished matric, and I just went fishing. But after a couple of weeks, Dad and Mum said, "Time to get a real job." So I applied for about 8, and I think I was offered 7. And the one that I took was working for a credit union. Okay, now I learned some important lessons. The head board member stood up and used his finger on me and said, if I wanted to go places in this world, I'd have to change my laugh. Now, can you believe how out of sorts that is? And when the boss was off sick for 6 months and then he retired, I had been doing his job for 6 months, and the same head board member said to me, the only reason at the second interview for that job, the only reason you won't get his job is because of your age. So next morning I did resign from the credit union, and I went to what I was doing on weekends and holidays and earning double the money, and that was back to fishing, okay, which Mum and Dad said there's no future as a career in. But anyway, that's what I did do. And I did that, but the problem was when I caught a lot of fish, so too did everyone else, and the beach price went right down and the retail price stayed high. So I needed a retail outlet, so just south of Hobart, little place called Kingston, I bought an existing takeaway restaurant and fresh fish shop, which I worked my butt off at. I worked really long hours. I'd usually go out fishing starting at about 10 o'clock in the evening, and then I'd finish about 11:30, sleep in the bottom of a 17-foot aluminium dinghy, and then I'd wake up at 4 o'clock and get fishing till about maybe about 9, and then I'd be in the restaurant, takeaway fresh fish outlet until that evening. And I did that 4.5 years, and I cooked for the Queen of England, didn't kill her. And I have to add Queen of England, because if I just said Queen, there's probably a few of those around. But talking about Mardi Gras and stuff earlier on. But look, what actually happened then was I got to the stage where I either had to work harder, which I couldn't do, or employ more people, or sell it. So after 4.5 years, I had this bloke who used to hound me. Have I got a deal for you, a business proposition? Now, I do not mock what anyone does in life, but personally, I knew Amway was not for me, okay? So I listened many times. I was a good customer, and in the end, I said, yeah, I'll come and listen. So after a 2-hour session with him and his wife and myself talking about Amway, I walked out shaking his hand, having sold the lease of Kingfisher Seafoods for for $250,000 plus stock, okay? So deep down really told me what he probably thought of that. So I then went back to what I was secure doing, which was fishing. And by this stage, I was taking friends, their friends, and even people that I'd just see on the beach or something, and it was free labour, and they'd know at the end of the day I'd come back, usually have a little alcoholic beverage or two and some good seafood. So I had a lot of fun doing that. And but it sowed the seed what I do now. I used to take them underneath the high sea cliffs in the southern hemisphere. I'd take them up to caves, into caves, blowholes, get them soaked at that. We'd see hundreds, if not thousands, of seals and dolphins and bird life and whales, and just went on and on and on. So I used to blow them away. So that sowed the seed what I started in 1999. I had a little 12-passenger, 28-foot boat built, which I did start. I remember only in good weather I used to chase after rent-a-cars and say, have I got a deal for you, to try and fill up 12 seats on a boat. And I successfully lost $40,000 in the first year of operating, but the trend was looking good by, each week it did get busier. I used that boat for 3 years, and on the third year I was doing up to 3 trips a day and turning away more people than I was taking. So it was time to get a new boat. So I had to sell that one to get the deposit on the new one. So over the winter I did that, and I went for a 44-foot, 48-passenger Noosa Cat. Anyway, it was running late, and I'm sure a lot of you have been in business and you've had the bank knocking at your door. Well, they were knocking at my door, and the emotion was pretty high, and a month and a half late, they finally said the boat's ready to pick up. So off I went to Noosa to find no engine in it. I remember this bloke on the front with a big disc sander, fiberglass dust flying everywhere, no mask, and I went up to him, why aren't you wearing a mask? And he said, masks aren't any good, the bloody things clog up all the time. So goodness knows what he was doing to his lungs. OH&S, they didn't like the management didn't really like the staff, and it was not how to run a business, that's for sure. So I bribed them. Again, hopefully no one here works for the tax office. If you do, it's too late to worry about it anyway. And with cash, counter teas, beer, and they knew my butt was sincerely on the line, and I worked alongside them for about another month and a half to get that boat finished and ready. I've got no idea why I got told it was ready. But anyway, The first test run turned right out of Noosa and just filled it up and came for Hobart. And I don't mind admitting, when I came around Tasman Island towards Bruny Island, I had tears rolling down my face because of the pent-up emotion, and dolphins were jumping all around the boat. And the bank, well, I just ignored them. I didn't even answer their phone calls at that stage, but now I had the boat to do cash flow. Anyway, I came up to the jetty, and I've got 3 children, Georgina, who's 20 now, from another relationship, but my 2 other children, Mia, who's now 15, and Noah, who's 12, and my wife, Michelle, were waiting at the jetty, very emotional, you know, and I made that fatal mistake and said to my wife, look, isn't this boat beautiful? I will never want another boat again. So make sure you don't do that. Anyway, I'll just go sideways a little bit here. I'm very fortunate, got a great family. The very first time I invited my wife out, Michelle, I said, there's a heap of us going for a walk up a mountain. Do you want to come? So she said, yep, thinking there was no harm in that. It was myself and 5 dogs, okay? And I gave her 3 dogs, the 3 handfuls, and I took the 2 easy ones. After the walk, we went to a pub called Fern Tree Tavern, and we had a Black Russian, okay, and then this is the important bit, she invited me back to her place for a drink or something. Now, a hot drink or something. Now, if you know me, I don't drink hot drinks, so I went for the something, and I ended up having to settle for a hot Milo, okay. But the moment that really stuck in her mind and stuck in my mind in some ways was I used to, Muirs of Hobart, I used to sell them a lot of fish, and they used to hold my bait, and I'm pretty slack at dressing, and I walked in through the factory in bare feet along a wet floor, and then I made the fatal mistake of walking into a blast freezer, and my feet stuck to the floor. Anyway, I first of all was pretty cool about it. Michelle was working there at the time, and I very coolly shouted, Michelle. In the end, I was screaming out her name. So she came a running, and I'm not kidding, we pulled each foot off and left skin on the floor. Yeah, but not much. But anyway, they're the things you do for love, isn't it? Anyway, then back to what I'm really meant to be talking about. I used that boat for about 3-4 years, and same thing, turning away stacks more people. I skip it every trip for the first 7 years, and multiple trips, and it was the time to get multiple boats, multiple crews, and treble your turnover to make the same amount of money, and I did that, and things have just got so busy. At that stage of those 3 boats, just before that, I think I had 3 staff, and to think in the 8 years since I've had those boats, we've now got 9 boats, 3 locations, and 93 staff. I would have laughed you off the street. My staff are like family to me. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have a great team, and I'd be lost without them, that's for sure. But anyway, something that I've put into my system of business, and right now, today I owe about $3.6 million, but back about 10, 11 years ago, I decided that I was always going to give back each year, and the only person who's really not happy about that is my bank manager. Okay, some years, every year I give at least 25% of my net profits away. Some years it's been as high as 85% of my net profits. The sort of things that we do a lot of stuff locally, learn to swim schools, plastics in oceans, lots and lots of things that we do. A lot of work with canteen and camp quality. We've spent $100,000 on eradication program on an island that was killing a feral species, killing 50,000 seabirds a year, and has been doing it for about 30 years. I took on a big one this year for the next 5 years with Diabetes Australia that's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to do, to try and educate all the schools and the parents and the kids healthy eating and healthy non-competitive exercise to attack type 2 diabetes in 4 or 5 years. We've also, with the university and Greening Australia, we've spent nearly $300,000 on doing north, south, east, west flora and fauna gateways, in Tasmania over 1,000 hectares that's now being duplicated on the mainland. I'm one of 3 companies that did the pilot program that's now been duplicated 100-fold on the mainland. So we're pretty excited about that one too. If I started talking all about that stuff, it would take too long. But I've now got 2 foundations. Last year we gave to over 200 organisations, and more of my time is going into that field, which I'm really, really passionate about. But the big bug that I have in my system is I want to give away more money than I can earn, okay? So as you do, you come up with this harebrained idea. Now, joining Rotary was not one of them, okay? But it involved joining Rotary, I decided to get my operations manager around one evening and say to him, how about we zip round Australia, 22,500 kilometres, 101 days in a 17-foot rubber dinghy with 8 inches of freeboard, with under 5 hours sleep a night, and no toilet, etc. And coming out of Mick was, you're mad, and that was without the adjectives, okay? But Mick, being a good guy as he is, we decided, you know the old Jacaranda atlases, yeah? The little square, oh not square, but rectangle ones. We opened it, I still had mine from primary school, and I can assure you when you looked at Australia, it didn't look very big on a map, okay? And so then we went on to Google Earth, and that night, over half a bottle of whiskey and maybe a bit more, and a little bit of wine and a meal, we basically planned the whole trip. Now, I don't believe in thinking too long about things, because if you do, you don't do it. So 2.5 months later, we had the boat delivered. We had the boat, 2 boats delivered to Sydney. We needed a cinematographer, so we put out across the Tourism Australia database, wanted cinematographer, cruise around Australia, all this sort of stuff. And we got over 200 expressions of interest. And then when they explored the more finer details of no toilet and how tough it would be, it went down to 3 people, okay? One of them did not even turn up for the interview. One was a 26-year-old Polish lady. To this day, Mick reckons we should have employed, even if she only lasted a week. And then the third one was a guy called Zorro, and Zorro really was his name on his birth certificate, and he was from Russia. I could speak half an hour more on Zorro and make it more probably interesting, because there's more dark to Zorro than probably what I'm talking about now. But anyway, Zorro had never been out of Sydney Harbour before on a boat, which was a good thing. All of his friends had a sweepstake on how far do you think Zorro will get, and the furthest one was Brisbane, okay? And we were just fortunate that he said yes, but I turned up on the day before we were leaving. We got a phone call from Australian Safety Management Authority and Search and Rescue saying how totally inappropriate it was that we were attempting this. It should be 2 years in the planning, and again, more adjectives and you're mad. But I said, give us 10 questions. So he gave me 10 questions, and he soon realised that Mick and I were retired or ex-Tasmanian fishermen, and what would be the great loss to Australia anyway. So I don't think we actually got their blessing, but we certainly got the permission to go. So it was all planned. Zorro saw the boats the day before, because that's when they did arrive, and that was 2.5 months late after Mick and I had that meal. And Zorro and his girlfriend Sarah. Now it's very important to hold this thought for 1 sec, or maybe a bit longer. Sarah is 15 years younger than Zorro, and she is a Marilyn Monroe impersonator, okay? If you do Google Sarah, Marilyn Monroe impersonator Sydney, you will see Sarah. And if you Google Zorro, Satana revival band impersonator, you'll get Zorro. Quite incredible. Anyway, so what happened, I convinced him that this 17-foot dinghy he was looking at was only the boat that we were using to get to the mothership, okay? I sort of stretched the truth a bit, and I thought he'd know I was only joking. But anyway, so we did finally leave. We reached over 21 million people on media through various forms. We had film crews, we had radio stations, we had newspapers, magazines, all the social media side as well. And it was quite imperative that we left Sydney on this particular day. Unfortunately, it was an East Coast low. Now, everyone knows what an East Coast low, coming from the East Coast of Australia, you don't go out in any size boat, but we had pressure on. So I put a friend up on North Head in Sydney to ring me on my mobile when the last film crew left North Head, which he did do, and by that stage we were very glad to turn around, duck our head down and come back into Sydney and hide for 2 days until it got calmer, okay? So we did that. I took off with my family. They were with me for about a week. We auctioned 1 seat per boat to the highest bidder in any area that was safe to do so, to raise extra money as well. What I might do, I might just quickly rip round Australia and just tell you maybe one thing from each state, you know, that is probably the highlight as we went around. But New South Wales, without any doubt, was going up to the fishermen, okay? Us ex-fishermen want to speak to fishermen. It's sort of a in thing that you do. And the first 2 boats that we went up to, we did notice as we were approaching bins of fish being tipped overboard. Now, we couldn't work this out, so the first 2 boats we went up to, they said, "Who are we?" We said it, and they said, "Bugger, we thought you were fisheries," okay? Yeah. So, two bright yellow boats definitely didn't look like us, it looked like fisheries. We also had the water cannons pointed on us soon after that. They thought we were Greenpeace, okay? And they were from a live cattle boat, you know, so they didn't want Greenpeace around, but all we were doing was going past a boat, you know. Anyway, it wasn't long before we were at Restoration Island, and from Sydney, a retired, I think he was an accountant called David, now is the guy who has his humpy, a bit of a hermit on Restoration Island. Now, we arrived there, we'd arranged to spend the night there. He came running down, and when there were no females on board our 2 little boats, he, without a word, just turned around, put his head down, and he walked back up to his humpy. It was getting dark. We shrugged our shoulders. It had just gone into crocodile country, and we looked at each other, and we'd caught a nice fish, so we thought, well, we'll just sleep down here at the beach or near the beach. Anyway, then he did come back down 10, 15 minutes later with a bit of homebrew. We drank that, so he said, well, you might as well come and have a meal with Miranda and I. So we did. We went and had a meal with Miranda and him, the 3 of us, and come bedtime we shot back down to the beach because Miranda was a mannequin. Yeah. It is the first time in my life, and it will probably be the only time in my life, where seriously a table is set for Miranda, the alcohol is given to her, the meal is given to her, and as he had more wines and he ate his food, he sort of edged in and drank her drink and ate the food as if it was just part of the evening. So once again, we bolted down near the beach when it came bedtime because we didn't want to know what happened after that. Anyway, we shot up north. Going across the Gulf of Carpentaria from Weipa to Gove was probably one of the 2 hardest things that I've ever done in a boat before. And it was 320 miles straight across the Gulf of Carpentaria. It was meant to blow 15, 20 knots as we went across. It got up to 45 knots. We went 26 hours non-stop. We left at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and got in at about 5 o'clock the next day. And waves were as big as telegraph poles. Fish were jumping out of waves, hitting us in the head and the shoulders all through the night. When it got daylight, we got reinvigorated for about an hour, but we actually saw how rough it was. During the evening, we had waves coming aboard every 10 to 12 seconds, and I was so concerned about Zorro in my boat that I actually tied him to the back seat. Now, the important part, what I talked about earlier with Sarah, 15 years younger, Marilyn Monroe impersonator, is Mick and I decided when we got into Gove that it probably was not the first time that Zorro had been tied to a seat before. But anyway, so we got into Gove, great welcoming committee. I might divert there for one sec. Wherever we used Rotary, it was just fantastic. You know, the organisation was just great. You know, you're very good at organising. And where there wasn't, you know, the publicans or the council or the general public of Australia were just awesome. In Gove, it was one of the places they had a raffle. They spun this wheel that looked like a flat tyre, okay, and number 38 came up 3 out of 4 times on the chocolate wheel. The publican had the number 38. And that's no lie, really did happen. Anyway, we got told that night, have you organised the permits for up here? And we also met one of the managers of Paspaley Pearls, not realising how tough it would be to go across the top. Us Tassie boys weren't used to big tides, crocodiles, and had no idea about permits. So next morning we met with the Indigenous Land Council elder, and he was fantastic, and he assured me after 15 minutes of chatting to him that permits were for white fellas, not for blokes like him and me. Now, if you look at me, how white am I, you know? Yeah, it doesn't come any more white, I don't think. But anyway, it just shows, you know, when he knows that they know someone's genuine, because permits, getting them can be up to 3 months and that sort of thing. Anyway, also Paspaley Pearls along the top helped us enormously. They gave us food, they gave us accommodation in places. They also gave us free fuel, which was just incredible. And so they deserve a plug if ever I'm talking. Now, Darwin, one day west of Darwin, we got into probably our worst night with crocodiles. It was a place called Poison Creek, and we were sitting down having a meal. It was dark. I'd caught a tuna. I'd thrown my shorts and shirt on a rope off the boat, and Mick said, not a good idea. I see, and he washed up the tuna oil. I said, not a good idea. And come sleep time, about 10 o'clock, it was dark. We just checked how deep it was underneath the boat, and it was only a foot. And again, with 8-metre tides, we decided to go into deeper water, turn the floodlights on, and just really, really close was a crocodile. There was 2 really close, one there and one bigger than the boat, and we had a baseball bat that if one scruffed us, we could whack it over the head, and if that didn't work, you'd whack your mate over the head. But anyway, look, I'll whip round Australia a bit quicker than I'm going. You know, WA just went on forever, seemed like it did. The animals we saw, the dolphins, the seals, the dugong snakes and everything, you know, was just incredible. When we came around Cape Lewin, the bottom end of WA, orcas leapt out of the waves at us. It was just incredible. Big moment rounding and heading east. We lost 10 days through bad weather. 6 of those were in Tasmania and 2 of them were in Sydney, and so only 2 others. We had another real hard refuel, which was just outside WA, a place called Esperance, where I swam 800 litres of fuel, 20 litres at a time, through 4-metre surf with Mick waiting on the outside, 6.5 hours swimming, which was pretty tough as well. A lot of the places we went were either not surveyed or insufficiently surveyed. It was South Australia was just a blink, so too was Victoria, and coming into home port of Tasmania, Bruny Island, I had my kids' day off school. We were running late. We'd average 5 knots down the east coast of Tasmania, and what happened there was we came into Bruny, and I live at where a lagoon flows in, and as Maxwell Smart would say, I missed it by that much, you know, and very emotional. Being away from the family for 3 months was really tough. It was another time I bawled my eyes out, had a great chicken curry. Going into Hobart was amazing. We had thousands, probably 1,000 boat and many thousands of people. And then the last 6 days to Sydney, my kids missed me so much that they decided to do that leg, Mia and Noah, with me as well. Last day, Ulladulla to Sydney, a white pointer, 18 foot right on the surface, let it get about about 6 metres away, and then I took off. And how bad would it have been if we'd stuffed up at that last minute? But anyway, look, lots and lots of other stories as we went around, but time won't allow that. Inside my head, I have got so much stuff that I do want to do. I love Rotary. I think you guys are great, and every club, is fantastic, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. I've got a short 3-minute DVD that we'll just whip through now, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Yeah, so this was leaving Sydney, and it looks calm there, but the second jump here, have a look how this bike goes up. That's pretty well vertical. So that's the boats anyway. That one's a manta ray. And this is Zorro, just to show you what he looks like.
I'll show you my fish at dinner. I just happen to have in the cupboard.
That's a beautiful size fish. We came into a lot of beaches and ate too, and that's actually Poison Creek where the crocodile was. And whales were just incredible. The last whale shot here is only about...
Have a look at this. These
5.
are coming up to say g'day to us. Just absolutely unbelievable. There's 3 just here. There's pods everywhere. Well. Just absolutely mind-blowing.
Friendly crocodile.
He's big enough to take a little chunk out of your Rick over. Pleasant dreams.
Now we've put this in because this really did
I
happen.
got about 1 hour's sleep at the beginning. I was thumping this chair all night. About 1:30 I gave up and went to the floor, and it was wet spray coming aboard, and I did get a wet shirt inside a sleeping bag, and so that's pretty wet. But I'm sure Mick and Zorro are the same. Zorro, I know, had no sleep last night, and got about...
That really did happen, yeah.
That does happen sometimes. That's the second time my hammock's broken. Luckily, I went straight down between this. This is where I spent the other half of the night. That was so not staged. That really did happen while some rock was filming. But anyway.
That's the 8.5 apostles. It's really the 12. This puts it into context. This is our home ground broody, so we knew where we were. That's my kids. I was crying then too.
The cruise from Adventure Bay to Hobart was all about the homecoming. What a welcome it was, absolutely mind-blowing.
Some of you would know John Peterson and Ted Ritchie and Peter Murphy and Muriel Heron. They were all there. And then coming back into Sydney. Now, after you've been around Australia, you wanted to check that the life jackets worked, and it's worth watching. My kids, Mick was excited at this stage. And have a look at my kids' expressions when we test the life jackets. Anyway, thank you.
Robert Pennicott, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir. Let's have a quick chat. I just want to run through a couple of things with you. Now, Zorro made an entrance in the video, so all the ladies are happy. Just trying to find out where Sarah is on the video.
Yeah.
Because the Marilyn Monroe impersonator, I was eagerly awaiting to see Marilyn on the TV, but no luck.
No luck there. Well, she met us in Hobart and met us one other place. But yeah, we've got some video of her, but didn't put it on there. That would have been another feature.
That's for a later time slot. I know where you're going with that. That's okay. Now, I saw the boat clearly getting a little bit of elevation. Just share with us, did you get through much travel calm?
Yeah. Well, actually, I suffer from seasickness. Yeah, but luckily on that boat, I only threw up once on the west coast of Tassie. That's when my radar fell off the roof, and I had to undo bolts in rough water. And so I go through a bit. In fact, our business would be probably the biggest travel calm consumer in Australia, I reckon. Yeah.
Wow. That wasn't a staged question, so I'm glad that went off really well. Now, you also mentioned that at the Fern Tree pub, you had a black Russian. So I'm just trying to work out, was that the lady that you married, or was it someone else?
No, she was there as well.
Sorry, I had to find something. You also mentioned no toilet on the boat, so 101 days without going to the toilet must...
I'm not that good. Basically, a leak is straight over the side, and then if you want to use numbers, number 2 was between the 2 outboards.
And the final comment, mate, the homecoming. Obviously, every time you watch that would bring such great joy and emotion to you. How special was that for you to be able to achieve something so great? And we spoke last night, and one thing you said is you really just want to make this world a better place, and certainly you've done that. So how much did that mean to you?
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, we raised $287,000 directly, but I believe that we got thousands of letters that people we had touched sent to Julia Gillard, and I know Rotary have worked tirelessly but on the polio side of things, but I do know that we were one of the catalysts on why Julia chipped in the $50 million, which you'd all be aware of. Yeah.
Fantastic. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that pretty much brings your time to an end. We have a little token of our appreciation from our conference chairman, Greg Goodman. But ladies and gentlemen, one last time, Mr. Robert Pennicott. Thank you, Robert. Great story. Thank you.